Total available market, the TAM today, is about $13 billion, and it is growing substantially with the things like the Airbnbs and the linen services and the physical therapists. It's just growing more and more.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Welcome back to the Franchise Hot Seat. I'm John Hayes, and my guest today is Kevin Dubois, who's the CEO of Clean Brands. He's been with the company about 20 years. And Kevin got started when he was a very young entrepreneur. At the age of 18, opened a restaurant, expanded those restaurants to 6 restaurants plus banquet facilities, and did all of that by the age of 21. So he's had a great start. He's only 25 today, so hasn't been that long. You're a young guy, Kevin.
I wish.
Clean Brands is the company behind well-known concepts like Lapels Cleaners, Martinizing Cleaners, 1-800-DRY-CLEAN, Press for Time, Dry Cleaning Station, and some others that are, or at least one other I think that I've missed, but we're going to talk about that. 500 locations just about across 9 countries. Kevin leads a portfolio that has redefined how garment care is delivered, especially through technology today, and making it convenient and flexible for customers. We're going to explore what makes this category work, why franchisees get excited about it, and why this might be an appropriate niche for you. Kevin, welcome. I'm happy that you could join me today on the program.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks, Dr. Hayes.
And thank you for being a member of the Titus Center Advisory Board. That's been terrific to get to know you and other members of your company, your son as well, who's been working with you and working in franchising. That's always great to see. So you lead the world's largest garment care franchise platform. So what's the secret sauce to that platform and to Clean Brands' ability to scale these different brands?
Well, I'll tell you, Dr. Hayes, if you had told me that's what I would be doing when I was a 15-year-old kid, I would have never believed you. Yeah. I grew up in the restaurant industry. My family owned and operated restaurants, and I really thought that that's what I would be doing for my career. And as you mentioned earlier, I did start on that path. And then several years into that, when my wife told me that her friends thought that I didn't exist because I was working nights, holidays, weekends, I started opening my eyes to other opportunities. And I ended up buying a restaurant from a gentleman named Larry Friedman. And Larry had been the founder of Lapels Cleaners. He, ironically enough, had also been a Martinizing dry cleaning franchisee in the Boston market. And he had built a really nice network of stores. And he had a groundwater contamination issue, which is, on par with a lot of the stereotypical dry cleaners. They use a chemical that is heavier than water, and it seeps into the ground and creates this groundwater contamination issue. Mm-hmm. And so he did this cleanup. It was $1 million cleanup, and he sold the business, and he really wanted to go back at it. And when he did, he wanted to really focus on the environment. And at the time, 25 years ago, he really didn't know what that meant. I mean, they thought being environmentally friendly was recycling hangers at that point. Mm-hmm. But we were lucky enough that at the time he was starting that, and then I wound up buying into that business, and several years later bought him out of that business. At the same time, there was a company called GreenEarth Cleaning starting, and GreenEarth was a very different dry cleaning solution. It was a liquid silicone. It broke down naturally to sand and water. And for a time, people didn't think that that could clean clothes, and they really turned this into a really nice product. And so as we were starting this franchise company, that really we wanted to focus on the environment, doing better for the employees, the earth, and the customers. GreenEarth sort of sprouted out at the same time. And so we kind of got lucky with that. And with Lapels, we really gravitated towards using GreenEarth. That was really like our differentiator. And that was a great thing for not only our customers, not only our employees who didn't have to be around that chemical, but it was a great way to sell our business as being different than all of the other dry cleaners. It was the world's only 100% dry cleaning solution. And so that was really like what started being different in the dry cleaning space 25 years ago.
And that's true of all your brands today, that
It is. Yeah, that's a principle that we've applied to all of the brands as we've acquired them. It's really something that I'm passionate about. You know, it isn't something that we do as a PR piece.
No.
You know, you only get one chance to make an impact on the world, and dry cleaning, you don't have a lot of those opportunities. But to start building dry cleaning plants that didn't have an adverse effect to the environment was a great way for me to make a mark in an industry.
What did you know about dry cleaning those many years ago?
Well, the short answer is zero. The longer answer is I can remember sitting in a conference room and I was like 2 months into owning the lapel system. And one of the people at the table said, you know, it's so funny how customers come in and they get confused between dry cleaning your shirt or not. And they said to me, like, do you dry clean your shirts? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And they said, why do you do that? And I said, because I go into a dry cleaner and they clean my shirts. And they started laughing and they're like, oh, they're not dry cleaning your shirts, they're laundering your shirts. And so, you know, I remember like, wow, geez, I got a lot to learn in this industry. I don't even know what they're doing with the garments when they come in the door. But I will tell you that because I didn't know anything about dry cleaning, I really had an outside perspective, and that helped with shaping like what the stores look like, and having like a strong marketing arm, a strong operations arm, which those things were like part and parcel of operating restaurants, but they didn't exist in the dry cleaning world. There wasn't a model like that. The people that proclaimed to be franchisors back then were really just selling equipment and signs, and there wasn't a whole lot of interaction between the companies. So that outside perspective really did help shape like building boutique looking stores and having strong operations and marketing support for a franchise system.
And the same question about franchising. What did you know about franchising when you got started?
Well, I signed my very first franchise agreement, Dr. Hayes, at the ripe age of 18, and I signed it as a sub-franchisor in the Ramada Inn system, which is a kind of a funny story that I'll make real brief. My family was in restaurants, and they had started to lease restaurants from country clubs, from golf courses. And they got my father was on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, which was very seasonal. In the off season, he would leave. He went to a condo that he had in Las Vegas. And I was sort of tasked with running this, you know, what was a very small operation at the time. And we got a call from a hotelier. And the hotelier said, hey, we would like to talk to you about leasing our restaurant. And I said, oh, that sounds great. Where is it? He said, Rockland, Massachusetts. And Rockland, Massachusetts was like midway between Boston and Cape Cod. And so I said, oh, this sounds fantastic. And I hung up with him and I called my father and I said, hey, you won't believe this great news. This hotel company wants us to lease their restaurant. And he says, well, where is it? I said, Rockland, Massachusetts. And it was as if I had said like Antarctica to my father. Because a lot of people on Cape Cod, like they don't leave Cape Cod. They don't go over the bridge. And so, you know, my very first entrepreneurial decision was I hung up with my dad. I called the guy back and I said, we're very interested. When can I meet with you? And the very next day, I drove my dad's Cadillac Seville. I grabbed his briefcase that had like 12 rubber bands in it just to show that I was more professional. And I drove up to Rockland and I met with this gentleman. And at the time of being 18, I probably looked 12. And I can't imagine that this guy took me serious. But at the end of this 45-minute tour, I said, when do you want us to start? Assuming he was going to say, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And he said, how's Monday morning?
Yeah.
And so Monday morning, I was in there operating this restaurant and mostly like focused on banquets. That was really the appeal for me. And I didn't tell my father about this until about 10 days later, in which case he was not nearly as excited as I was about the opportunity. But we wound up making a deal. I bought him a Jaguar, which he had just bought, and I made the payments on for the next 5 years. And that was like, my introduction into it. So I signed a franchise agreement in that business and then ultimately signed 6 more through different hotel companies over the next few years. So that was my introduction into franchising. And I still to this day think that hoteliers are magnificent franchisors. And mostly because like they control the volume of sales coming in. Like those reservation systems are really powerful for hotel companies, and they had very strict QA. Their QA visits were, very intense. And so that's where I really kind of cut my teeth in franchising, and I still apply those principles to what we do today.
So a lot of people would be surprised, like so many other industries, to know that dry cleaning is a franchise. People don't put that together easily, but it's been around. It's one of the oldest niches in franchising. You've been in it 20 years, and at least at Clean Brands, it's changed dramatically, I assume, since you started 20 years ago. What are the major changes today about dry cleaning?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think when I tell people I'm in franchising and then follow it up with and in dry cleaning and laundromats, they don't recognize that. I think the typical person thinks of franchising as food service, and McDonald's is always like the number one thing that they think of, which is for sure. And, it's funny, once you get into franchising and you drive around, how many businesses are franchises.
Yeah.
And I would say the thing that I think has shifted the most in the 20 years that I've been in it is that the typical person looking to get into franchising today, I think there's 2 things. One, 20 years ago, I think when people talk to you about starting a franchise, the number one anxiety that they had was replacing their corporate income. And I think many people today are looking to diversify their lives. They want to keep the corporate gig and they want to start a franchise, or they already own a franchise and they want to open a different franchise to diversify. And then the other thing that I think is substantially different is we used to spend most of our sales pitch in the first couple of calls trying to talk people out of food service. And it now feels to me like people really have gotten over the fads and the food and franchising a lot. And people are either looking for food or they're looking for a service business. And service franchises have really gained some tremendous appeal. And our business specifically, it's certainly not the sexiest of business, but it has a great business model. It has recurring revenue. It's been around forever. As you alluded to earlier, our Martinizing brand's been franchising for 75 years. And we've got franchisees in our system, 3rd generation, that have been in the system that long. So those are the things that stand out to me as being different today.
And I would suspect that technology really has set the path of these businesses, faster growth, more convenience for customers. But it's also got to be tremendously expensive, and you need people who know about this technology.
Yeah, you are 100% right. The one thing that's never changed about dry cleaning is that people choose a dry cleaner or a laundromat based on convenience. Like that's always number one. But what convenience has been defined as has changed dramatically over the years. So, if you think back 50 years, dad was going to work, mom was at home, she was going to the grocery store 3 times a week, and you would put a dry cleaner right next to the grocery store. Like that was the definition 50 years ago. And then all of a sudden the world started to change, and mom and dad were both going to work, but they were stopping at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts on the way to work. And so you'd put a store right next to somewhere that they would see day in and day out. And then we started doing drive-thrus, and then we started doing pickup and delivery, where we were coming right to your front door, and we were using an app and technology through the web. And now the next generation of it is we've got stores that are unmanned. You walk into the store, you swipe a card, you pull up your order, the conveyor spins, and it drops it off almost like an ATM for cash with your clothes. And there's no human interaction actually needed there. And if I had to predict the future of that technology, I wouldn't be surprised if we had robots that were cleaning the clothes and driving driverless cars to your house and having the robot bring the order to your door.
Yeah. You never see a live person anymore.
Yeah.
With that kind of technology. You have multiple brands. And how do you decide which brand goes where? How do you line up a brand with a market? So Lapels isn't going to be the same as a 1-800 Dry Clean. How do you know what, and how would a franchisee know, oh, no, I want the 1-800 Dry Clean, I don't want the Lapels in this market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we thought about the theory of like merging all of them into one. And as I talk to franchise owners that have been in the system for decades, generations, that seems tricky. The two models that we franchise actively are Lapels and Martinizing. So 1-800 Press for Time dry cleaning station. We've molded them into the Martinizing system, which is the biggest of the brands. And then between Lapels and Martinizing, it's really almost like a Carl's Jr. and Hardee's kind of scenario. And what I mean by that is whatever brand has the biggest brand appeal in that market is the brand that we lean toward. So in New England, it would be Lapels. On the West Coast, it would be Martinizing. And that's really, whatever is in the best interest of the franchise owner is where we go.
Okay. And laundromats, it seemed like, back in the day when I was a much younger guy, if I could have afforded to buy laundromats, you always would think, and back then it was quarters, and you had to buy, the soap, the detergent as well. And that was a purely cash business with maybe somebody being in the building to make sure things were, if they broke down, there was somebody there, but sometimes no one there. The greatest business format. Is it still, how has it changed?
Yeah, no, good point. And that is very much what your typical laundromat has looked like. And that has been a wonderful business for many, many years. It's the lowest failure rate of any small business, according to the SBA. The reason that we started building and franchising laundromats is we really feel like the lines between dry cleaning and laundry are getting more and more blurred by the day. And the best way for me to articulate that is I think about my son, Josh, who you've met, the typical, 20-something-year-old. They're really getting wired to convenience on an app and to your door. And so, you think about that person that has like their Lululemon pants, their polo shirt, and a blazer. Those three things get cleaned in three very different ways. And for years in our industry, we've really almost pushed people to cleaning them in different ways. And then over the last 10 years, those lines have been blurred where that customer really doesn't care what machine you're putting it in. They simply want to put these things in a bag or drop them off somewhere and have them all cleaned. And so that was like the optimization for us. And so as we started building our laundromats, we realized, okay, we want to build a laundromat that has all the latest technology. So our laundromats, the doors open at 6 a.m. automatically. There's cameras everywhere. They're 100% cashless, and you can go in and launder your clothes without anybody being there. we also felt like a lot of those laundry customers are going to have dry cleaning in addition to that. And why send them somewhere else to do it? So we put a Lapels laundromat in each of these stores. And for us, we have this great advantage competitively that we've got a network of hundreds of stores across the country that we can partner that laundromat owner with to do the wholesaling for them. As a matter of fact, I own a dry cleaning plant in Waltham, Massachusetts, and I do the wholesale work for our Boston laundromat, and they do my wash and fold now. So it's a great marriage. And then the third leg of that new laundromat for us is B2B. So think like the Airbnb property managers, the physical therapists, the massage studios, and really optimizing the machines when they're not at peak use. And all that is folded in with pickup and delivery and an exclusive territory for our franchise owner. It's really what I believe is like the optimization of the next wave of laundromats.
Why is a laundromat not open 24 hours a day?
Well, they can be, and we keep sort of pushing the envelope in terms of what our hours of operation are. For the most part, we're open 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I guess we could be open. We could keep the laundromat only portion of it open 24/7. It's just, we sort of like the safety and security of having that window where it's closed.
Okay. And is there an operator on site?
Yeah, that's the beauty of the laundromat model. Those typically, that laundromat component operate with one employee. So it's basically like a managerial kind of position, and that person can answer questions, show people how the cashless system works. They can do some preventative maintenance with the machinery. They can take in the dry cleaning while they're there. They can take in the full service laundry for people that just want to drop off laundry and have us do it for them.
Okay. And how big is the do-it-yourself laundry market today? Even apartments and condominiums, they've got a place for a washer and dryer. Washer and dryers are not as expensive as they used to be, and you can buy them used or damaged, or pretty easy to get a washer and dryer. But what percentage of the population depends on a laundromat in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. And what I would say is the best way for me to articulate this is I think that my grandchildren, when they're building homes, will not have a washer and dryer in the house. I really don't think that is a chore that the next generation of people are going to do. Certainly you can do it, but this next generation is sort of thinking like, why would I do a minimum wage job when I can farm that out to somebody else and I can be on the beach? It's really sort of a quality of life thing. So I really think that the total available market, the TAM today, is about $13 billion, and it is growing substantially with the things like the Airbnbs and the linen services and the physical therapists. It's just growing more and more.
And let's talk about franchisees for a moment, or people who want to operate these kinds of businesses. How many of them are driven by, a laundromat, very little labor needed, people do the work. It's not cash anymore. I guess it's all credit card driven. You don't put quarters in a machine like we used to when we were kids. But they also think, well, that's an absentee ownership business. How does that play out in your brands?
Yeah, there's definitely a shift of that. We use the word semi-active. I guess it's just there's not a lot of moving parts to the laundromat, and that does have great appeal to entrepreneurs. I think what we're finding in comparison of the laundromat to our dry cleaning model is the entrepreneur that maybe wants to open 3 to 10 of a laundromat, whereas prior, our typical dry cleaning franchisee was somebody successful in corporate America that wanted to be involved in the day-to-day aspects of the business and immerse themselves in the community. So we are finding that it's a little bit different demographic between the two models. But you're right. I think, and of 100 leads coming in, 80 of them are interested in the laundromat versus the dry cleaning today. And it's exactly to your point earlier, which is there's not as many moving parts. They are somewhat semi-active. There aren't a lot of employees. There isn't a lot of pilferage. There's not a lot of inventory control. So not a simple business, but a simpler business to run than, something with a lot of moving parts.
And of 100 leads, how many of them, or 80 of them, are going to be for laundromat? But of the 80, how many of them are driven by, I see this as an absentee business, I don't need to be there all the time?
Of 80, I would say at least 50% of them, Dr. Hayes.
And is it true? I mean, should I buy one? Because I can teach school, but I could own a laundromat here in West Palm Beach, which would be a good thing.
Well, I would say it can happen both ways. I was just at our College Station laundromat with a very successful entrepreneur that has been successful in many things. And he is not the day-to-day manager. He hired a general manager to run that business. We have other stores where the owner operator is in it day in and day out. So it can work both ways. The thing that we've really gravitated towards is a lot of people have the conception like, hey, a business can run itself. I'll be in my office and you slide the money under the door and that's how it works. And really, if you are going to be semi-active, we really put a focal point on one, making sure you have a general manager that's tasked with all of the KPIs of running the business and that you're tasked with managing that general manager.
So that's a great topic itself, the general manager, because we've run into many situations with franchises, with brands that say you don't have to operate this. You can continue being an engineer, continue your day job, but you invest money and you get a good general manager. But good general manager, that makes me tremble because we're franchisees because we know we'll get it done. We've got to make the bank payment at the end of the month. We got a headache today, or we got a cold, or we've got something, some kind of pain. We're going to show up. We're going to get the place open. We're going to get it done because that's what franchisees do. General managers, not so much. We've seen studies where a business that has general managers compared to the same business that has franchisees, the franchisees are more productive. So do you have a whole training program on how to make sure if you're going to have a general manager, you get a general manager that's going to be as good as you or nearly as good as you?
Yeah, for sure. And also, we want the franchisee to be part of the training and the onboarding and in the business day in and day out of the gate so that they know how the business runs and are capable of backfilling that general manager position for sure. That's been a trend in franchising for a while. And I think most franchisors are putting a little bit more elbow grease into the training of a general manager and also, suggesting things like phantom stock and equity in the business so that it's not, a short-term relationship.
Keeping a general manager long-term seems to be a struggle for people. And if you give them ownership in the business, that certainly would help. But some people have complained, franchisees have complained, I'm ending up paying the general manager so much, there's not enough left for me to gain anything from it, other than I own the equity, but that's not all I want.
Yeah, I can certainly see that, especially coming from food service in my world. I thought cash was like quicksand for a while.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends on the business model. It's certainly easier for us to pull this off in our laundromat model, which has a much lower labor percentage in terms of the sales.
Yeah. And if you think about franchisees in any of your brands, if we divide them by thirds, a third of the franchisees do really well, and a third of the franchisees do okay. They might help you validate that this is a good business, and yes, they encourage future franchisees to join. But then there are a third, they're not doing so well. This was a mistake either on the franchisor's part or the franchisee's part, or maybe it's territory, maybe it's technology. It could be any number of reasons. It's a third, and a third. how do you look out for your brand and for your franchisees to know that, well, we are recruiting people and signing agreements with people who will most likely be at the top end, in that top third? How do you do that?
It's almost like building a corporate structure. A lot of it goes into who you actually let in the gate. And that's something that over the years I've put more and more focus on. I just told somebody that we weren't accepting their application for franchising, which is always difficult, but I knew was not the right fit for our franchise system. But that's a lot of it. I mean, for us, I guess we're fortunate at this point that we know what the right person looks like. And so part of our 7-step process to awarding a franchise is running a personality profile. We're running disc profiles with people. For us, like a personality profile does a couple of things for us. One, it just tells us who we're talking to. Sometimes it's a matter of just adapting our coaching. Like we have several business coaches, they have different personality profiles, and sometimes just matching the right personality profile with a business coach is helpful. But also, just spending time with folks and making sure that you're putting people in your franchise ecosystem that are the right fit. There's always that red flag or warning sign that if you really get your eyes wide open and your ears open, you will pick up on.
Yeah. So it's great that you use the disc profile, and I've been happy to help your brands through the last several years, I believe. And what does the disc tell you? Can you easily figure out, well, this is someone for us, or this could be someone for us, but they need to do this, this, and this? How do you use a disc profile in making decisions?
Well, in our process, and thank you for your assistance with it and the tip originally on doing it, because it has been a game changer for us. So what we do is we run the disc profile before we do what we call Meet the Team Day, which is where we have the candidate or candidates on a call with our corporate team. So we have somewhat of a sense now of like what those different personality profiles lead to and how they function and how they operate. And we've really leaned on what personality profiles are the most successful. And so first and foremost, it does that. But, secondarily, when we're onboarding that person, we're really taking that into account. And we're putting them with a mentor, a business coach that we think will be the right fit for them. And that has a substantial impact and difference on their success. I've seen it where we've had somebody with a business coach that just wasn't the right fit. And we look at the personality profile, we match it up to who we think would be better. And it's like a completely different person. It really has a substantial impact.
Great. So one of the things that worries franchisees, business owners in general, is nobody wants to work in America. Is that true? And how much of a problem is that?
There was a period of time a few years ago where I believed that. I thought that, and I thought the world was heading that. But I've been pleasantly surprised, even more recently. I think the world just knows what it wants a little bit more than before. I think, 50, 60 years ago, I think you had people that were miserable in their job and they were counting down 30 years until they got their pension or retirement, their final day. And I just don't think that the next generations are wired like that. They know what they want, and they're willing to go after it, and they're willing to put the work in, but they want to have the path forward. That's sort of my take on it. I've really come kind of full circle on the evolution of it over the years.
But is it hard to find people to work in your dry cleaning business, for example?
It is. I mean, there's definitely a culture component to that, and not only in the recruiting, but also the retaining piece of it. The nice thing about our business model is we don't need a lot of people. I always like draw the comparisons of back in the restaurant business, where I'd have 50 employees to run a $2 million operation. And now, I fast forward to our laundromat model, we've got 3 or 4 employees. So that helps for sure. And, you don't have to sort of settle, so to speak. But yeah, I think for sure, definitely, the more mundane tasks and roles and responsibility is probably a harder thing to fill. I think a lot of people want to be like the next generation of Uber discoverers in the world. So for sure, it is harder. We're real big on culture, both at our corporate level and our franchisee level. And proud to say that helps a lot in retention and retaining of people. I think that's even more important than ever right now.
When I think about pickup and delivery, I think about the person who's doing that work. Who wants to do that kind of work? And yet today, if I don't want to drive to the dry cleaner, and I don't want to drive to drop off or pick up. I want my pickup and delivery service. How difficult is that component, finding somebody whom you can depend on to do that for you?
We want everything pick up and delivered. Well, who knows, John? Maybe some number of years from now, those vehicles will be driving themselves. But at the moment, that is a tough job for us to fill. What we've gravitated towards over the years is a lot of times it's somebody that's a retired postal carrier, or they were doing door-to-door sales for, a mosquito or fertilizer entity. But very often those are people that like to be a one-man band, so to speak. They like being in the car by themselves and not around a lot of people. We've sort of empowered them to be salespeople, so we're paying them a bonus for the new customers that they're bringing in. We're paying them a percentage of the route that they're running, and so we're really turning it into a career path for them. But you are 100% right, because everybody's competing for drivers. Almost every business model out there is now competing for them, and there's not enough of them.
Yeah. There's also the matter of it costs too much to have my clothes dry cleaned. A lot of people just they're not going to buy clothing that you have to have dry clean. Why is it so expensive to take 5 shirts and slacks and a suit coat to the dry cleaner?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of what you're buying is labor, and labor is the biggest line item in our business model. And depending on the quality of the operation, the more labor and the more highly skilled labor is going into that business. So really, that's what's driving the cost of dry cleaning. It's not so much the cleaning cost itself. It's just the labor that goes into it. And the other thing that I will say, I've been watching this ad on TV for a brand that they say over and over in their ads, like, no dry cleaning needed, no dry cleaning needed.
Yeah. And
I got so tired of watching this ad, I said, I'm going to order 2 of these shirts and see what they're talking about. And I just got these shirts last week. The first funny thing that happened was they sent me, beautiful technology company, by the way, and the product is fantastic. They sent me an email saying, hey, thank you for being a customer. And although you don't need to dry clean these shirts, they'll look a whole lot better if you do, so to speak. It's funny, as we walk around our dry cleaning plants, I would say more of the clothes hanging on our conveyor than not are the brands that are selling, no dry cleaning needed. You just can't get the look and feel of a professionally pressed garment, or even the life of it. I've had garments, polo shirts especially, that I'm washing and drying myself, and 8 washes later, the thing is almost, unwearable. And our GreenEarth dry cleaning solution does extend the fabric of it and gives it that brand new look and feel. So there's a trade-off there.
Okay. So along with the price of what it costs for the dry clean clothing, it's also not on the inexpensive side to invest in dry cleaning or laundromats. What's the cost range? How much money does an investor, a franchisee, need to have to get involved in the business?
Yeah, great question. We have several different models. I'll start with the laundromat and work down. And it's funny, of those 80 of 100 leads coming in, a lot of them will say something like, I only want to open a laundromat. In other words, assuming that that's got to be cheaper than the dry cleaning plan. So our laundromat is about $1 million to open. About half of that is equipment. Nearly half of it is build out. Build out is very expensive, getting more and more expensive, and there's a lot of electrical and plumbing and drainage that goes into that. So that's the laundromat model. And then in the dry cleaning space, we basically have a couple models that work together in a hub and spokes environment. So we have our dry cleaning plant, which is where the clothes get cleaned and pressed. That's about a $600,000 investment. And then we have our satellite stores that just take in the work and send it to a plant. That's about a $100,000 investment. Our typical franchise owner has 2.5 units, meaning they own a plant and a satellite or two in addition to it. But the model does work independently. So we do have franchisees that only own satellite stores, and they send the work to a dry cleaning plant, our franchisee, and vice versa. But most of the time, people will build out the hub and spokes.
Okay. I assume when you look back on your career, Kevin, you would say the restaurant business was exciting and fun and profitable and full of challenges, but it was a good decision to move into cleaning. True? Or do you sometimes think, I wish I was back there running a banquet hall again?
Well, I'll tell you, and I was just having this conversation with a friend over the weekend. There's nothing that is a bigger adrenaline rush than running a restaurant on a busy night when everything's going right, which is, 1 out of 200. But when everything clicks, there's nothing like that adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And so I do still miss that a bit. Although, my restaurateur experience today is like going and picking out a nice Cabernet and ordering a steak. Like that's much less stress. And so I do miss that. But from a business perspective, moving into the dry cleaning and laundromat space was a great move for me and for my family. And my wife's friends now know me as a real person.
They know you really exist. Well, Kevin, this has been great. I appreciate the time that you've given to me here to talk about clean brands and all the opportunities that exist for people who want to become franchisees, and this could be the exact niche that they need to be in. Hope so.
Yeah, I appreciate the time as well, Dr. Hayes. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.